I'm thrilled to be here. Of course, I believe in Kansas City as truly a mecca of talented people that tell stories. And my background's in journalism. I work on television. I've worked for radio. I haven't worked in newspaper, but as well as film. And I think that a lot of us have to understand all the many media, including new media, that are out there in order to continue telling stories and to and be like the accomplished people on our panel. So today's panel is about the parts and pieces, the components of digital storytelling. And first we have John Baker with the Kansas City Art Institute, and Rob Grace. He's with Bazillion Pictures, and if you've seen their stuff, amazing, which we'll have a couple reels to see their work and see how accomplished they are and things that they're doing right here in Kansas City. And then Diana Stuart with Hallmark Cards. Welcome to the panel. First, I want to let you guys just tell a little bit about yourselves and how you use digital storytelling in your careers and everyday life.
First and foremost, as an instructor and teacher at the Kansas City Art Institute, can anyone hear me? How's that? Okay, good. I do have my class and my students concentrate on the storytelling side of things first and foremost, and then we go into digital, because once you get digital, the world is your oyster, both literally and as far as the actual tools that are available. They're so varied that I do kind of lean my students overall more towards concentrating on story. And I do that also as a filmmaker, so I would say that's probably the main focus for me.
Rob Grace, Bazillion, and most of my time is spent with art direction, creative, the things that lead up to the digital phase, storyboarding, a lot of traditional. My background's as an illustrator, but I also do modeling and texturing and some 2D and 3D animation. And so our purpose is to help someone deliver their message, which is typically advertising, though it can be educational as well. And just use the tools we have to do that effectively. So like many of you, it sounds like.
Should I use this one? Is this on? I'm Diana Stuart, and I'm a creative director in one little part of Hallmark, which is Hallmark Properties, and properties here means intellectual properties. So the wonderful characters that some of our amazing creative talents at Hallmark have created and brought to life, and really established a fan base around. So Hoops and Yo-Yo, Maxine, Jingle, if you're familiar with Jingle. And we use digital storytelling in so many ways. It's been really fascinating to just watch technology evolve and find the different ways that we can bring our characters to life for people and bring them into people's lives. So our group does everything from illustration on greeting cards to individual efforts around e-cards, where they're doing animation and creating maybe their own sound or music track, to 30-minute TV shows that we've just started trying to work on over the last year and a half, and had 2 on TV last year. My training is in graphic design, and I've always been kind of on the art direction and kind of that coordination, trying to get the right players together to do that work and bring these projects to life.
Just so we get an idea, raise your hands. Who here is a narrative film? Okay, and news, whether it's journalism, and print. Any print media? All right. Well, so obviously, you guys have a wide spectrum of what you work in. Can you talk, though, about how have the mechanics of storytelling changed when we see things on, an iPad or a small iPhone, a tiny screen? How have you changed the way you tell stories, or you're teaching your students to tell stories, to get their story across or information across for news or narrative?
Well, I would say the main change is actually kind of giving more control to the creator. instead of having, because the overall program is very student-driven, so I will walk my students through the entire production process from pre-production, post-production, storyboards, animatics, and I would say the biggest change would be giving them the power to wear all the hats in production. That's one of the beauties of working digitally, especially in this day and age. When I started in production, my own personal background, I was trained as an illustrator traditionally back in school, and then kind of fell into filmmaking and animation on purpose. But I would say that the main thing is showing them the fact that, as a one-person, one-man, one-woman band, you can actually use all of these different tools and create something that traditionally, maybe even as close to like when I first started, it took an army to do. And now you can be that army. You can wear a lot of different hats all at once and turn around a quality product. So I would say that's probably my best answer.
And we see that too with the multimedia journalists as well. I mean, you're seeing people that are going out with a camera in larger markets. We're used to, for those of us who started in broadcast journalism, as the one-man band. Well, now in markets like Kansas City, St. Louis, even larger than that, you are having to wear many hats. What is your experience in terms of storytelling, how it's changed? Are you shooting tighter? Are you, because you're watching a small screen, not as many wide shots? How has that changed for you in your commercials?
Well, I just agree with John on what he said. Can you hear me? Is this working?
Hold it to your mouth. Yeah, hold it to your mouth. Hold it right up there. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there are lots of tools that give capabilities to people that they didn't have. Case in point, my 14-year-old daughter and her friends want to make a movie. Now, that would have been really expensive and really wild to try to pursue 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But they saw Super 8, got inspired, and guess what? For $300, they've got a video camera, and they asked me, could you do the special effects? And can you make things grow? It's like, I think I could do that. I couldn't have said that just 8 years ago, even. So putting power into the hands of individuals, regardless of their age, is a big improvement. With that in mind, the interesting thing is the basic fundamentals of telling a story are all exactly the same, because we receive stories the same way. The same things are significant to us. So that's the one thing I believe it's important to keep in mind, is that technology will change, and it's changing more rapidly, yet the fundamentals can give us a sense of confidence. Those things won't change. And if we're familiar with those, then regardless of the way it's expressed, it can still have impact and power. And these are just new opportunities.
As we heard about Walt Disney, it's about finding talent, the right group of people to come together. Diana, can you talk about that, about finding people that can make that story that connects with people, that will get 1 million or more hits on YouTube, or whatever it may be?
Yeah. It's interesting because I'll echo something that these guys have already said and that we've heard today, which is, that there's certain aspects that will never change of storytelling. And, it's a comprehensive vision of the story you want to tell and how you want people to feel or what you want them to know after you've told that story. And then everything else is details. And it's those details that are going to be changing so rapidly. And once you decide on some of those details, that's going to drive the talent you need to bring together for that project. And it's really interesting because even just within our 2 animation projects within the last couple of years, really different types of talent we need to bring those animated specials to life. We are working with a studio in Portland, Oregon, Bent Image Labs, to bring Jingle to life. And they are experts in stop motion, and have people who know how to build phenomenal armatures in silicone puppets, something we don't know how to do at Hallmark, that we aren't going to do every day. but that they are brilliant at, and that they can bring the subtlety and nuance of the expression that's going to build that story and build the emotional heart of that story for people as they watch it. You need a great script writer. It's kind of the bigger the story gets, the more collaborative it needs to become. I think one person can build a really powerful story. It depends on scope and time. The bigger the story and the more quickly you need it, the more people you need to bring in. And then the more specialized the skills and talents become. So if you're going to bring that story to life on a phone, you're going to need entirely different coding capabilities. You're going to have entirely different parameters. And even depending on what story you want to bring to a phone, you might go to different groups for each of those, because each group has a very different specialty, a very different vision that they can do really quickly and can elevate the effort that you want to bring through their own knowledge and their own skills.
So if someone wants to be successful monetarily as well in this industry now, what do they need? What are those skills they need?
You know, there are people who are going to have all of those skills and can do it by themselves and do something really brilliant. And then there are also really kind of tactical skill sets. And one thing, my daughter's heading off to college and is in that phase of, what do I do? How do I figure it out? And it's like, just kind of go towards the area that you know you have a passion for. And once you get there, there are so many areas of specialty that you can't even begin to imagine until you get close to it, that you'll get drawn into that, and then that skill will lead to another skill, and it will become monetarily viable for you.
Let's take a look at some of their work. Can we look at John's with the Art Institute, his reel? Tell us. Yeah.
That was a reel of work from, I'm fairly sure, everything from a few sophomore pieces to a lot of senior work from the 2011 and 2012 school years from the animation department at the KCSourcelink Art Institute. So just to let everyone know.
Talk about what it takes. Obviously, we're not truly seeing story, we're seeing clips and pieces, but tell us about which ones of those particular films that worked, why they worked, what components went into making them successful.
Well, I would say, I'll start off with just one in particular. There was one with a robot, kind of pinkish looking robot that was on screen. That in project in particular, we had, I think, 3 students working on the project overall. They collaborated. One of the students did backgrounds, another student did, first of all, they all, of course, agreed on the story, but it was a really nice experience of seeing the students collaborate together on, bingo, that's it. Collaborate together on a project The two animators that were working on the project kind of collaborated on the majority of the character animation. Another third student who actually I think was in a different department actually, and they brought in as a friend to like, hey, can you help us out? We're going to have our hands full doing all this character animation. He painted a lot of the backgrounds, and then actually, now that I think about it, there's a fourth student who did the music for the piece. So there were, collaboration. We do encourage that quite a bit, but also just to let everyone know, the program is based on, it's student-driven. So each student, as I kind of was alluding to before about, being able to do a one-man or one-woman show, it's actually encouraged for the students to actually take charge of their entire film from beginning to end. So I'd say that one in particular kind of sticks out to me just because I remember how successful the collaboration between the students were and how well it turned out. So.
And your students have had a lot of success, like winning.
Yes, we have a student Oscar winners, and I think that was 2010. Don't quote me on that; I could be wrong. From student Oscar winners to students getting into film festivals and the like. So it's been an interesting ride, and we've had quite a few success stories come out. So
what are the keys to their success?
I would say actually the entire program is built, they're taught traditional animation methods, first and foremost. If you walked into the animation room at the Art Institute, you would see a bunch of animation discs. They mentioned Walt Disney was mentioned earlier in the program. That's the same technology that has been used for decades, if not almost 100 years now. It is 2012. But they're taught literally traditional frame by frame, 10, 12 frame per second on paper animation. And I think starting there and then moving them into working digitally is a huge part of the success, because I think in order to learn why the digital tools are set up the way they are, whether or not you're working in After Effects or some sort of editorial program, if you understand that back in the day there used to be a guy with a razor blade slicing film together to edit things together, you understand why there is such a thing as an insert edit or an assemble edit when you push a button in Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro. Same thing goes for the animation. When I can sit there and show them, well, no, in order to animate on paper, you need to be able to flip through and preview what you're working with very quickly. When they sit down in front of a computer and can, instead of previewing 6 to 7 different frames, they can actually preview, in this day and age, probably 30 minutes worth of their animation very quickly. The understanding and the workflow and the why, I think, makes a completely different sense to the artist itself. So I think that's the best answer I can come up with. So, yeah.
And then, Diana, you brought a reel as well. Let's take a look at that. Do you want to set it up at all? Is there anything?
These are just the 2 trailers for the shows that were on last year, and they'll be on again this year too.
This holiday season, 2 of the world's greatest superheroes will unite to save Christmas.
What? You gotta be kidding me, man.
No, not really. Hallmark invites you to get into the spirit of Christmas.
I bet you Santa's not even coming.
Who?
Santa!
With 2 of their most lovable characters, Hoops and Yo-Yo.
You guys are gonna totally freak when you see the stuff that's in this sleigh. I'm stuck!
In a wild adventure for the entire family.
Where are we? Don't you get it, man?
No, this cannot be!
I think that kid in there is Santa Claus.
They may be polar opposites.
Toy repair team ready to assist.
You know nothing about making toys.
Easy peasy, man, no sweat.
But together, they will change history.
But what is your favorite kind of toy?
I've never had a toy.
Out of all those toy makers, I just knew you were the one.
The one?
Santa Claus.
Santa who?
Merry Christmas, Santa! I cannot wait to get home to my self-flushing toilet.
Hoops and Yo-Yo Ruin Christmas, coming this holiday season. His name is Jingle.
Jingle, you're a good dog.
His world is filled with loving friends.
Jingle!
and thrilling adventure.
Gotcha.
Jingle, look out!
You can run, but you can't hide.
But it's missing one thing.
Jingle has no home.
Ring in the holiday season with a Hallmark Channel original animated special, Jingle All the Way. An all-new premiere, Friday, November 25th at 7, only on Hallmark Channel, part of Countdown to Christmas.
Boy, talk about a learning curve. This was a really amazing thing and project to be involved in. And we really started out 2 or 3 years ago. Jody Shade, who is my business partner, and Sean McLaren, who's our Hall of Fame producer, and I set out to try to figure out, well, how would we take some of these short stories and characters that we have and build them into 30-minute TV specials. And really began the education process, connecting with people all over the country who do this to teach us about the parts and the components. And then it was finding all those people and to help build these shows into real TV shows. So they started with ideas that were grounded at Hallmark. Bob Holt and Mike Adair are the creators for Hoops and Yo-Yo, and they, with Bev Carlson, our Hoops and Yo-Yo producer, actually wrote the script for Hoops and Yo-Yo Ruin Christmas. And then it was successfully taking that vision and bringing a small army in to help. It was the storyboarders, I think 8 different storyboarders all over the country, producer and director in LA with lots of Disney and Warner Brothers experience, animation studio actually in New Zealand, which if you want to talk about time zone issues, try working with someone who's working tomorrow. That was interesting. So I think the digital era has really also changed the way we can work, that you can be anywhere and collaborate and work together. And I think that's part of the potential of bringing more skills and training and everything to Kansas City, because you don't need to be in LA to do this work. You can be anywhere and you can collaborate together digitally, which is phenomenal. Jingle also is based on a story that was written within Hallmark and a book that was released a couple years ago with this fabulous high-technology interactive plush that as you read the book to your child, the plush actually responds. The dog barks and interacts with you while you're reading the book. So it was how to expand that story, which was a couple of paragraphs, into a 30-minute TV special. So again, brought in script writers, storyboard people, working through our studio who really coordinated that effort with us. We did more of the coordination on the Hoops and Yo-Yo piece with individual contributors who were scattered everywhere.
Rob, you don't have a reel, but if you want to see Bazillion's work, you can go to Vimeo. I know that if you do a search for Bazillion, it's absolutely amazing. You guys do fantastic stuff. How are you able to be successful in Kansas City? I mean, you just spoke about how easy it is now to work, because of technology, to work around the world. How's it helped you?
I don't know that I can answer that. I think that people here have the capability of doing work of equal quality of anywhere else. So, but I'm not involved in the marketing of our company. Mm-hmm. The thing I think is to just always focus to do your best, but I don't know that I can answer that.
Well, you have a thriving company in Kansas City.
That's true.
You know, and
well,
you know,
it's
K-12 and
very smartly run.
Bruce Brandon is here.
I just work there, but it's very well run.
Great. Is there anything that you could encourage in terms of qualities and talents and people that would help Kansas City thrive? What we need to do to build up our talents?
One thing generally with a company that I believe is valuable is to look for the opportunity to work collaboratively. And sometimes those sorts of organizations that help internal communication seem almost ridiculous to do if you're 7 people or 9 people, but it lays the groundwork for doing larger projects that are more demanding if you can establish good internal communication early on. And I don't know if that answers your question, but to me that's one of the most important aspects. When you're smaller, there's a tendency to want to do everything yourself, and that's cool. But as you grow, it's good to think in terms of how can I take advantage of this person's strength and that person's strength working together, just exactly like John mentioned a minute ago with the 3 students, who I've met all 3 of them, and they are each different. They have different strengths. They brought it together and to do a project that captures your memory and your imagination. So the same thing at any level is important.
So do you have any advice that you've learned to be successful in this new age and to not be chasing after everyone, but to be leading the way? If all three of you would like to.
Wow. I would actually say thinking comparatively, and I've seen this not only in students but also in the workplace here in Kansas City and also working nationally. I'm currently teaching at the Art Institute, but I did spend 7 years in an animation company here in town called MK12. And working there, I did kind of see a lot of people kind of working, and also working with students, a lot of people in the industry as a whole, not just here in Kansas City, but they work comparatively. I'm like, well, I want to be like, or I would like to do this type of work. And the one thing that, like, I guess I definitely learned working with MK12 was, use your own voice, because that will make you stand out more than anything. I tell that to peers that I work with and also to my students. No one on the face of the planet is going to have the emotional or mental fingerprint that you have. And as long as you put that into your work, then you're going to stand out no matter what. So I guess that's my advice, my 2 cents.
Things are changing so quickly. I would say a love of learning and a willingness to go in and not know at all what you're doing. Because there is so much new technology. Everyone is discovering it and shaping it together at the same time. And collaboration, which was mentioned, I think is key. And being able to work with people in all these different disciplines. And it's collaborative learning as well, I think, is how you discover and unlock these tools that are in everybody's hands today and so powerful.
Do you have any advice? No. You brought up MK12, and I just, can you give us some of your experiences working with the company, how you guys were successful and how you worked? Did you storyboard? Did you sit in a room and just soundboard ideas off of each other and kind of talk about your process? Because you are so original and unique and innovative and creating things that aren't seen anywhere.
Well, actually, at its base, I think the whole issue of, speaking from, where you're coming from, I think was a big part of that. But secondly, I would say just kind of the collaboration process. We did many different types of production processes, from storyboarding things out to working on a project that we'll get that's maybe mostly live action, not so much animated. Grab a video camera and literally run through the entire 30-second spot, 60-second spot in the back room or out in front of the office and shoot the entire spot ourselves. Mm-hmm. We called the office the clubhouse for the longest time because it kind of felt that way. A bunch of guys sitting around and like, hey, I've got an idea. What if we did this? And the guy next to you is like, oh, what that? Actually, no, we should do that. And a lot of the ideas, amazingly enough, would come up on coffee breaks. And after you spend a day and a half of sitting there, wringing your brains out about the creative on a 30-second spot or some sort of short film or whatever, mm-hmm. You're out back having a smoke or having a coffee, and all of a sudden, hey, you know what? This is what we should do. And then it's a small shop, probably about 7 to 9 people, and it would be we'd kind of be like, well, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and we'll powwow on Friday. Mm-hmm. And then everybody kind of goes off to their corner. And the nice thing about it, the shop was small enough, it is small enough to the point where kind of we all got to wear a lot of different hats. Like I would get to edit one day, and then the next day I would get to work on style frames of storyboards. Mm-hmm. The guy next to me, we all had our core competency, which is another thing that I teach my students also, is like if you have a core competency, stick with it. Everything else you do can come out of whatever that core competency is, whether or not you're a writer, illustrator, artist, animator. You can, as an animator, still kind of do storyboards. You can do editorial. You can still do, rough sound because you know how to work with sound as an animator. So, you stick with your core competency. And we all had those core competencies, but the nice part about it is everyone got to wear about 12 different hats in any given day. So I don't know, I think that's probably the best answer I can come up with as far as a process. So it's completely organic. It always has been, it still is. I'm still in touch with all the guys there since I've been teaching, and it's still the same, and it works. So,
and bottom line, it's always about telling a story that will resonate with people, whether it makes them laugh, makes them cry, a kid, even to make a smile or generate a smile. That hasn't changed no matter what technology you're using. Is that something that you always go back to, all of you, in terms of the stories that you tell, is connecting with your audience?
They need to connect, that ultimately. And one thing John just mentioned was describing an atmosphere that allowed for creative. You have to have time and give yourself a break. Yes, you have a schedule, yes, you have a deadline, but at the same time, ideas can come at any time. The creative process never really stops. And it doesn't surprise me to hear, having a coffee break, that's when the great idea comes. We've all done this, driving, in the shower, you wake up, aha, I got it. So you just, and pay attention to those things. And then be open to great ideas from other people. That's another aspect of the collaborative. And all of this relates to the digital in that you want to deal with those things as soon as possible. And you can begin the production phase, and you can still be a bit creative, but at a certain point, especially if it's in a larger production, there's a point we're going to have to say, this is our story. And to make changes after that is much too expensive. So.
And also now with technology the way that it is, and cameras are less expensive, editing equipment, the stakes are lower, so you can take those risks. You can go out and tell those maybe off-the-wall stories or stories that, and just challenge yourself. I think, how much time do we have? What? 15. Did you want to do some Q&A from the audience? Do you want to open it up to questions if anyone has it?
The students worked digitally and also with physical objects. I think stop motion work was mentioned earlier in the Hallmark piece that you saw earlier. And our students do work in stop motion, real live objects, camera. Again, actually, that does go all the way back to they're taught the basics of animation, squash, stretch, timing, but it's just applied to a stop motion piece. And as far as your audio question is concerned, the reel's just kind of quiet. I didn't build that particular reel of work, but I think that was just kind of a way to break up the actual overall flow of the reel itself.
Okay, one more question.
I think actually, in the case of me personally, it's been kind of my experience and has brought the market kind of to me. But as far as like the work and working with MK12, the most amusing thing is that they didn't do any advertising. They still don't do advertising. They don't do campaigns. When I started working with them, the overall, I guess, idea behind MK12 was, and still is, we're filmmakers, first and foremost. We do these commercial jobs so that we can afford to be filmmakers. That's what we do. So every year, the goal, and we hit the goal sometimes, and sometimes we didn't, but the goal is to finish a short film every year. And that was our marketing. That was the very first thing you saw in our reel, was the short film that we produced that year. A lot of times we'd produce a short. One of the shorts, The History of America, actually got us to Sundance in 2008. Sorry, I'm off on dates right now. But a lot of times we would have agencies call us and go, hey, we saw that short film you did. Hey, can you do that for us for our product? And our answer 99% of the time was, you know what? How about we talk about it, because we don't like to repeat ourselves. So how can we expand on this idea? So I guess that's the best answer I can give you on that one. So.
And they did the opening title sequence for the last Bond film, and Stranger Than Fiction did all the graphics work in that. So I think, is that where it came from? Essentially seeing your film, seeing your narrative, and then hiring you for such a huge project?
Yeah, and a lot of it, actually, I would say, when I first started in the industry, everything was tape-based. We'd work on digital beta tapes and things like that, and I was working actually at a video production company here in Kansas City, and MK12 was my client, and it was in a day and age where they were walking in with QuickTime files into a place because they couldn't afford the $200,000 decks to actually output this stuff to send it off to MTV and HBO. And it was kind of neat that I was like the only person in the office at that point who actually knew what to do with these QuickTime files. And I find it kind of amusing that, you know, I feel pretty good about, you know, having, you know, landed there, that we were, I don't know exactly how far ahead of our time, maybe only a few months, but definitely, we were definitely kind of pushing the envelope as far as what could be done at the time, and it was, it stuck with us, and it's still stuck with me, so, yeah.
And the question is, how do you monetize making short films or narrative when you're distributing over YouTube or whatever video sharing?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right, with the new media. And you see so many businesses starting out today, like Twitter, where it's like, well, we'll just get the biggest possible audience we can, and then we'll figure out how to monetize it, which is pretty tricky, you know, and you hope that you can. And when you get that big, I'm sure they'll be able to. But for us, you know, there is a true fan base behind some of these characters, and so our intent is continue to build that fan base and also give those fans the things they have been asking for. And ultimately, yeah, that will bring people back to buy products for that those characters represent. But we do, we go beyond that just because the characters have really become part of people's lives and things that they really cherish and enjoy. And so it's taking our products to a whole new place, and I think opening doors to new kinds of products we can't even imagine yet as those characters become part of people's worlds and their relationships with each other, whether that's water cooler talk, for Hoops and Yo-Yo, we know we have been in 4 weddings and 1 funeral. Literally. You know, and you see those characters on screen, or you go visit the Hoops and Yo-Yo website, and those characters have become such an important part of people's lives. We get videos that people send us of, you know, one guy in the Netherlands made himself a yo-yo costume, asked one of our creators if he would do a little recording of a proposal, played it through the costume to his, you know, intended, who said yes, and then they sent us copies of the wedding invitations that had Hoops and Yo-Yo. I mean, they made them themselves because we don't make these things. You know, there were favors for all the guests. People send us photos of their wedding photos, and they're holding the characters, or the characters are on their wedding cakes, and one man was buried with the plush, you know, in his casket. And you hear these things, and you go, wow, really, you know? I mean, we thought we were kind of doing fun e-cards and a great website, and it goes so far beyond that. And so to continue to build on that, it's to a certain extent the Twitter thing. You don't know where it's going to go or how it's going to come back, but we know we have this phenomenal base and a huge product base in the case of Hoops and Yo-Yo, of people who love those greeting cards and send them avidly to each other and love the gift products. But we're just hoping to take it to a new place of really being part of people's lives.
To me, it seems like there are there's a lot of talent. The real question is, what are the opportunities for outlets? Who will sponsor them? Who can take advantage of them? A lot of that is awareness. There are a lot of businesses that could benefit from it if they were aware of how it could be done. Small companies aren't typically doing their marketing through phones at this point, but they've all bought newspaper ads because that was the way it was done. Well, that awareness is going to grow, and that means all those opportunities are going to grow. And then there are a number of schools in the area that all teach skills related to digital storytelling. And so the talent is there. It really is a question of what opportunities there are, and the good thing is that's growing. But events like this are intended to help that effort to expand those opportunities. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know we have so many different areas within our creative organization and a group that really does just take video tools and things like that to do exactly that. How do you communicate within the organization to create really a compelling story for the goals that you're driving towards? My group doesn't do that, but it's another group that manages that. And sometimes they'll get in touch with us because they want the power of humor. They want the power of the characters who are going to help express some of those ideas to people. So we'll do custom work like that. We'll do custom greeting cards for key clients at big retailers that we work with. Which goes right to product, but making it really tailored and something special that they will absolutely love to have and be very meaningful to them. So I think that there's a huge realm of possibility there. I think it gets to that scope question again and the expense of how much you want to do and how much expense you want to bring to bringing those goals to life for people. But again, the tools today are so powerful. One person who has that great, kind of hybrid thinking that can draw on all these different disciplines can create a really powerful tool when they understand the objectives that you want to bring to that corporate audience.
As far as, especially rotoscope, and that's been around quite some time, I think it's all a pencil. They're just different colored pencils. So it just kind of depends on whether or not you actually want to use, a piece of charcoal or a watercolor brush. Do you want to do rotoscoping or do you want to do motion capture? What works? If you're going to be doing something that's a little bit more live and interactive, I've seen some people do amazing things with Xbox Connects that are literally live in real time. You can see what's going on. You walk up to it. You are the actual main figure in the presentation or whatever it is, may have you. Whereas I think in that particular application that really works. Maybe in something else it doesn't. So it's all kind of part of the overall digital toolkit. So.
I'll throw in one thought, which is I think as long as the intent is the story you're telling, it can work. It's part of the details of what brings it to life. I think when it gets in the way is when people are so enamored with the technology that it's all about the technology, and you kind of watch it and go, well, the expression's not really that compelling, and you get, that becomes more of the focus than the story. But I think when you harness it correctly and bring it in, it can bring stories to life in such powerful ways. People aren't sure where reality stops and that story begins. I know that we've got a number of resource groups that are reaching out just locally, always looking for ways to expand our talent, both just in how many people we have, to put at problems, and also to bring areas of expertise we don't have, in to partner with us, whether that be coding applications, whether that be new aspects of animation, et cetera. I think one of the reasons Hallmark is so involved in this particular program is, we want to have great local talent. We have a phenomenal community within Hallmark that we want to keep training and developing and having them. Again, technology is moving so quickly and we have such talented folks. It's a constant learning process. So it's not just hiring in new kids, it's making sure everybody is moving along with the technology. So there's training within the building. There's also just wanting to really make sure that we have phenomenal bench strength within the community that we can collaborate with. And that's going to be a big ongoing project, again, just as things, but you can do it anywhere now is the magic of it. Like we said, that digital technology, you can learn anywhere and you can do great things anywhere. And so we should have, we hope that we can someday have just a real regional hub of expertise here.
I would say you get out what you put into it. And if it really doesn't matter if you're, I tell everyone when I first start teaching them that, your best tool is a pencil and a piece of paper. You can teach a monkey how to push a button, but you cannot show this monkey how to tell a compelling story, And yeah, sure, the guy next to you may have the exact same tools you do, but again, it does go back to, experience, I think one of the reasons why, quite honestly, I think MK12 has been so, having spent so many years there, I'm just going to use them as an example, but why they're so successful is because their competition is on the coast. Their competition is in New York, LA, worldwide. They're not here. And being here in Kansas City, I'm a Kansas City native, been here all my life, you are going to have a completely different point of view than anyone else out there. Same thing with your neighbor right next to you who has the exact same tools you do. You know what? If you both put your hearts and soul into it, you're going to have two completely different things, and your justification comes from here, of your story and your work. So that's about the best.
Yeah, it's what's the value of your voice? That's what it comes down to.
All right. We want to thank our panel. Wonderful job.